Welcome to LinkedUp, Breaking Boundaries in Education, a podcast that focuses on what is happening in education today, connecting everyone to the movers and shakers that are breaking boundaries in the education arena.
Welcome to LinkedUp, Breaking Boundaries in Education. You know, we have so many podcasts that center around SEL, so many. But I remember one a couple of years ago, Jerri, where we highlighted different types of mindfulness and SEL practices that were not typically typical.
Right.
And I remember that was fun. That was a lot of fun.
And it was.
I do remember vowing to myself that I would try to make mindfulness part of my everyday practice. I don't know if I'm that good at that, but I'm still trying. And I feel like since COVID, obviously, there is such a wonderful awareness now around the importance of daily practices of mindfulness and SEL. So I'm really looking forward to our guest today who center their life's work around that.
Right. I'm excited too, Jamie, because when I was looking at the website KYDS, I love that. And well, I'm going to let you tell us all about the website and all the information. But the first thing I thought of was that African proverb that it takes a village to raise a child. Yeah. And it looks like that's exactly what you're doing. You are really educating the entire village so that everyone can participate in mindfulness and learn these skills. And you're hoping to bring about more equity and inclusion and understanding of others. And, you know, really building those relationships. That's where it all happens. That's what it's all about. So today our guests are Mychal Mills and Rodney Salomon. And we are so excited to have you here from Kids. First of all, tell us Welcome. What KYDS is.
Yeah, so I just much gratitude to Jerri and Jamie for bringing us on this platform and allowing our voices to be heard because, you know, I see, as you mentioned, Jamie, mindfulness, you know, can be like a little mindfulness, but it's really about the presence in the daily moment, you know, moment to moment awareness of where I am and where I'm not. But our organization started on that premise, but it has evolved so much. And KYDS stands for Konscious Youth Development and Service. And our mission is to transform youth, schools, and communities through holistic practices, understanding when my body, my mind, and heart are in balance, I am at my best state. I am at my optimal state, right? And understanding the body has its own infinite intelligence, right? And what we put inside of our body actually creates what we feel inside of our body. So the importance of proper health and nutrition, the importance of moving my body, releasing stress and anxiety, trauma from my body, and understanding the mind is similar to the body. What we put in our mind becomes our well-being. So am I putting junk music, junk TV, just like fast food can be bad for our bodies, those things can be bad for our minds. And a mind is like a garden, right? And if I could just tend to that garden a little bit more delicately, more intentionally, you'll see a different state of mind come out and you'll see the world in a different place. And that last aspect is the heart. And this heart holds so much, right? And a lot of people, and we've seen it over the last couple of years, especially in the pandemic, a lot of people have a lot of pain in their hearts that they haven't dealt with. All right, let me put my blinders on and go about work and school and community and just do things to distract me from what's inside my heart. But we have to heal this space. We have to open ourselves up to loving ourselves authentically so we can share love elsewhere authentically, you know, and that's where we do a lot of the deep practices. You know, mindfulness is like a prerequisite, but we go into the breath work, the sound, a lot of different healing modalities to help individuals heal this space so they can see that infinite power within themselves. Don't pass the rod.
That intentionality that you spoke of, I think, is really the key. Yeah, and I think it's when you mentioned the blinders, right? We just go on with our lives and kind of block out what might be, you know, pulling us down, just, you know, kind of blinders on, full steam ahead. That I think is so common and I think is really a root cause and something that it really should be a focal point. So important. So Rodney, how is it that you and your nonprofit, by the way, this is a nonprofit that you guys do, you started in the schools and realized it was so terrific that you wanted to start in a single school, right? Is that how it started? And then you wanted to branch out from there because it was the realization that there was such a need. But I think it's so interesting because you started this in 2014, before there was such a big awareness. So what were you seeing that was so important to get it started? What were you seeing that was so necessary to get
I
started?
think the root of it was like the illusion that I was living in. You know, I played football at Monmouth University, and I remember my last game, and just like I had like a little bit like identity crisis. My whole life I played sports. All I knew was sports, and then I wasn't going to the NFL. I wasn't going to no league. I was like, man, my career ends here, and it's like, who am I? And I remember being in school at parties in the back, you know, like partying, but my mom would be like, man, like what is my purpose? Like, what am I doing here? Like, is this some kind of a dream, an illusion? And as I kept asking these questions, it allowed me to begin to really form a deeper connection with myself. And me starting to realize that, wow, football was my outlet for processing my pain, my trauma. I could hit people, I can release my anger, it's okay to do it. I'm on a scholarship to do this. But I realized when that outlet is gone, what was I changing my energy into? So little by little, that led me to start to be more introspective, start asking questions, reading more books around philosophy and mindfulness. And I realized there was layers inside of me. This muscle wasn't really strength. This was me covering up pain that was really rooted deep inside myself. So as I got closer to my core, changing my diet was very beneficial. You know what I mean? Shifting what I fed my mind from the music and the TV that I consumed, and really going into my heart and listening to like, man, my childhood, although I tell myself it wasn't that bad, like, man, it brings tears to my eyes when I think about some of those memories, or it brings a lot of frustration and anger when I think about some of my past. But as I gave myself the space to observe it without judging it, I gave myself my space to feel it, you know, and really release some of that emotional energy, I started to see a better version of myself. And I started integrating some of these tools. I was a youth development specialist at Asbury Park High School for about 8-9 years before I left kids full time. And I was starting to share, you know, giving kids healthier snacks, less sugar, less processed food, showing them simple, informal mindfulness practices, having more vulnerable conversations. And I was seeing a transformation happening at an accelerated rate. But I knew, because I was having the same transformation within myself. And then me and Mike, we crossed paths together, and we were both on this journey of shifting our jives, changing our mind, and opening our hearts. And we were like, hey, maybe we can give this back to those youth that when we didn't have this as kids, to really support a shift of their own consciousness and growth. And that was kind of the foundation. And as you mentioned about schools, I worked in Asbury Park High School. So when I left my job, I knew we had leverage. We knew we had something special, but we didn't know who was going to bite the bait. And we just believed that, hey, man, even though it wasn't as highlighted on society, we saw the mental health issues in 2013. We was like, yo, this is not right. We were living the illusion. And when we took our glasses off, we were like, okay, why are we the only ones that are seeing what's happening? How can we support, whether it be consciously or unconsciously, create safe spaces where people can explore themselves, connect with each other, and really begin to heal, regulate, and find something beautiful that's laying within each of our hearts. So
I mean, that is such an important life lesson too, because throughout life, we do change kind of our identities or what we identify ourselves as, like you, college student, or maybe working in a school. And the kids that you work with are going to go through all of these series of changes, and giving them those skills to be introspective and to think about who they are. It's just such great life lessons. It's not just for now, it's something they'll use the rest of their lives.
You know, we just had a podcast called The Hidden Opponent, and that is one of the it's an organization, another nonprofit that focuses on school athletes. And so that was one of the topics that we discussed. I mean, when they leave their high school and or college athletic career, there's a depression that sets in because they don't really know who they are. Just as you said, what is my purpose? And there's a really big transition, that time frame, at least, that needs to take place in order to figure that out. But as you mentioned, if they have these skills that are built in from the beginning, then that transition doesn't need to take place. That you know, there is going to be a little bit of that, but it's not going to be this severe like gap in their lives that could really occur because of that. Having those foundational skills. And something else that you mentioned, that you wanted to bring this into the schools because it wasn't a benefit that you had growing up. Not many people have that, those skills, those foundational skills. So it's not like they're going to get that from their parents. So I think that brings us to our next question. You saw the importance of bringing this full circle in terms of pulling the community in, not just doing it at the student level, but also you work with teachers as well to support them, but then also work with the community, parents and grandparents as well. How does that work? How did you realize that was really essential?
Well, I'll say this because, the hidden gem too is like me and Rob, when we connected 2013, we were just meeting in Wegmans every week, the upstairs little cafe area. We could just sit down. That was like our office, our first official office. The staff knew us. Always saying what's up to us, giving us some love. But, we were planning something. We were putting it together, and our minds, it's like a meeting in the masterminds. That's just like envisioning what we can see in this world, and that was the foundation of kids. But it came into like November of 2014 where we were like, you know what? Let's just get out there and do it. Right. And we were both working our full-time jobs. So we still had our full-time jobs. We had to pay the bills and all that, the other stuff that you have to do in this society. But we knew that we needed to get it out there. So in 2-3 weeks, we planned an open mic, and open mic was December 15th, 2014 at Cooler Cafe in Asbury Park. And the open mic was just supposed to be a platform to get our energy out into the world, let them know we are here, this is what we're planning, this is what we're doing. But that open mic was so special that it became like a staple program of our community program that we have done every month since 2014 in Asbury Park, creating a safe space for individuals to share authentically, to open up, to heal, and through the creative arts, right? We hear a lot of the pain and the suffering through poetry and through music and things of that sort, and also the light that happens in there. But we wanted to have that platform, a safe platform for individuals to show up and connect and build community. So our community programs were starting to roll out while we're working our full-time jobs. We're offering monthly meditation sits, for the community. So we had youth and adults in that setting. We had families come into that setting where they were able to come together and just start to heal together, right? And we started doing after school programs. We had our Journey Summer program that summer 2015, which has been, we have not stopped that as well. Every summer since 2015, we've had that Journey Summer program free of charge, understanding that inner peace shouldn't cost a thing, but we do accept donations, and a lot of the families are gracious enough to actually give us a donation for that, because it's a labor of love, when we can provide them the healthy, nourishing meals, organic, non-GMO meals, and provide their soul with some deep soul work and soul food where they can just start to understand themselves. Like, Brother Rod, I don't have to go through college to have that crisis. I can have that crisis now, so I can begin to learn these tools, learn these skills to propel myself on this journey. So for 3 years, we were doing community programs, running after our day jobs to our evening jobs just to make it work, make the dream work. And it was beautiful. You're doing a labor of love. Then 2017, I'll let Rob pick up here. That's when we took that leap of love and left our full-time jobs.
It was really this labor of love, and we took that leap of love in 2017. I lost a close friend of mine, and I was like, you know what? Life is too short, and if I'm going to live my life, I love my job as school-based film specialist. I thought I would never leave, but I was like, man, let me pursue my purpose and follow what my dreams were. And we got a contract with Asbury Park School District in 2017-2018 school year. It was mostly exclusive for like the top 20% of students who were at risk with behavior, truancy, detention, suspension, and we had phenomenal work done in transformation. And we also had a mindful moment room. We had this from Holistic Life Foundation, inspired by their work, where we had a room in the school, in the high school and middle school, where kids could come into for 15, 20 minutes and gain a time to check in authentically, reflect on where they're at, and optionally go through some kind of practice that they can utilize, or also reflection of art, expression, journaling to help them go deeper into themselves. And that first year, we witnessed how much impact we had with the students. But when they go back to class, they go back into their household, like 2 steps forward, maybe 1 or 2 steps back. And we recognize that we made an effort to say, hey, we need to work with the educators. One educator is going to be in front of 20, 30, 40, 50 students. and one student is only one individual alone. And that's when we saw the greatest shift and impact in our work, when we started working with the educators and showing them some of these simple tools, helping them practice being vulnerable and giving them some kind of emotional risk, because these are things that seem natural, but these are skill sets, helping them strengthen their empathy and learn how to be more present so they can respond more, react less. And from that year, after the second year at Asbury Park, we started working with schools all throughout Monmouth County and then all throughout the state, providing staff development, training, student services and programs, and really beginning to see what we learned in those 3 years of Asbury Park School District. Because our third year, we were in all 5 schools, had a mindful moment in every single building, and we had over a total of 8,000 visits in our 3 years. A lot of them are duplicated visits from kids coming in multiple times, but the data that we were able to see, almost 90% of the kids that left our space improved their overall well-being, from anger to neutral to being happy, steady, and calm. And we knew that we had something special here after our time working within the school district of Asbury Park.
Can you tell us what the mindful room setup is like? If someone was wanting to create a space like that, what would you? Yeah. What's that like?
On your budget, one of the schools gave us a pretty nice budget, but essentially we had like a 6-step process, and this is like the reverse opposite of what a classroom would look like, because we know in your mind subconsciously when you see desks and chairs, it makes your mind get that feeling. It could be positive for some. I know for myself, I would sometimes get in a trigger state walking in the classroom. So, I would say like a hybrid of like a youth center and a wellness studio, where we have cushions, we have mats, we have little blocks as chairs, we have an art station, we have a fidget station, we have space where you could just sit down on cushions and relax. Kids would come down. Yeah, we had lots of plants, lots of crystals. We used to have our diffuser in the air until the school said we couldn't have it because some kind of cold, but we knew that frequencies of sound, of sense, of visuals has great effect on an individual's nervous system. So we would always have specific tones and vibrations playing inside the speaker that we knew had therapeutic value. We would always have some kind of imagery that around certain colors that would affect the psyche of an individual. So we did a lot of subtle things where kids just said, I just want to come in the room because it just feels good to be here. We realized that they felt safe. Some kids would never even do a practice. They would just come in, take their 15 minutes and go back to class. But we learned that, this is a safe space for them. Whether they're doing a practice or not, there's an energy that they feel when they come in here. And we've helped teachers create little corners in their classroom, but we're seeing more schools are looking to create some of these spaces that could facilitate a space of wellness, or a space where kids can just be safe within their body and be safe inside of environments. So that's a little cookie cutter model, but kind of the essence of what we kind of modeled that space to be.
And it sounded like there's something for everyone. If you're artistic, if you need to work it out, however you want to do it, you could do it in that space.
And we've had teachers visit us as well, over and over again. Yeah.
Absolutely. And that is a great practice for a teacher to say, I just need some time. I just need to think a minute. I think that really shows kids that everyone needs that. And they begin to understand that, just because you're an adult doesn't mean that you have everything figured out all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah. And like Ron said, that's the biggest transformation.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's where probably you saw the growth in this, in where as you mentioned before, not just working with the students, but then working with the teachers, so that first of all, it's they can support themselves, but then also, as you mentioned, modeling for students how important this is, so that it's a life skill for everyone. And then teachers then have a better insight, as you said, Rodney, building that empathy. So, a lot of times, as in the school system, we go through with blinders on. We're getting through, we have, the progress reports due, then grades are due after that, the holidays. Everyone's just like full steam ahead. So they need to have this time to realize, like, I need to slow down. I need to take a step back. And because I am reacting and not responding, right? So just being present and mindful about what we're doing, what we're saying, how we're saying it, how we're feeling. So that way you can say, all right, I need to step back and use my skills. And I love how these foundational skills that you are promoting are things, as Jerri mentioned, that connect with them. They can choose, they have choice, they have options. And so if they're artistic, they can choose that. If, even when it comes to what they're eating, they are always listening to music. So have them be focused on what's appropriate for their mind and soothing their soul, what they're watching. So these are things that they do and that are easy for them to use as tools, but they just need to do some tweaks so that they're positive instead of negative.
And I have a question for you. Did you see a difference in discipline referrals or the school culture overall once this started? Was there any data that you could look to see if it was making a difference in that aspect?
Well, I'll say the first step, and I know Rod, you can pick up after this, but what we've seen initially in the first few years of Asbury Park, and this is reported according to their data and metrics, because we don't really see suspensions and things of that sort and the different metrics, but based on our imprint, and I just say not just with the students, but inside the building, suspensions decreased by 80%.
Oh my
Right.
gosh.
And it was beautiful, and it's beautiful. But on the other side of that too is just youth and everyone who's experiencing trauma, right? And we know this through childhood trauma research, ACEs, adverse childhood experiences study. And I don't just limit it to children, because there's adverse adulthood experiences as well, and children become adults if that pain's not unhealed. But what individuals are really seeking is for positive support around them, the positive well-being of an individual around them, and where they feel connected to somebody, they feel like they belong to something, they have a level of safety around somebody and trust, and through that, it gives me the bravery to show up and be more authentic in myself, so that our initial work was really just creating that safe space in this school for everybody, youth and educators, in the first few years of Asbury Park. And then we took a step forward in our discipline model. And I'll let Rod explain it, since he was the guru behind that.
And I see you guys all know too, school has I want results right now.
Yes.
And I was fully aware that this is a role slowly unfolding. This is a load that's rising to the surface. So part of our mindset was satisfying the school expectations, but our real goal is like, man, can I support this individual for the rest of their lifetime? Can we plant this seed inside them? As we know, and we've seen it as youth development specialists, I would have kids come back after 3 years of graduating and be like, man, Mr. Rodney, I wish I would have paid attention a little bit more. I wish I would have did more community service. And those little reminders like, oh, these kids are listening. But some of these seeds, the soil needs a little bit more tilling, they're a little bit rockier, and they're not going to sprout instantaneously. So we had a program, an 8-week called ALL. And what was happening was one young man had his headphones every single session. He had his hood on. We thought he never paid attention. And one day I'm in a hallway coming into the building, seeing this kid huffing and puffing, but he sits down on the steps and he's taking some of the deep breaths that we were showing during the group that he never did in front of our group space. So that gave us an awareness like, oh, okay, when we're in classroom, just because the kid's not listening, just because the kid's not interacting, doesn't mean they're not downloading the information. And there's research that we know now from Heart Math Institute, the facilitator and their heart space, their emotional regulation creates a field that is connecting to whatever population they're serving. So we know that we really focus on our staff being centered, grounded, and energized so they can emit a wave of information that is going beyond just the intellect, that is going to, like when you go to someone that's speaking, that's inspiring, like you not just hear his words, you can feel that energy move through your body, and they have a science that shows that. So we evolved the culture through restorative justice, and we were full-time in the high school, in the middle school, and not the elementary levels. But after the pandemic hit, we weren't renewed our contract, but then we got renewed the following year. And they were so much more appreciative, and they recognized the importance of the work that we were doing, because things took a complete left turn in terms of behavior, emotion, trauma, mental health crisis. So now that we're back in the school district this year, it is an awareness of like, this needs to be the foundation, and we recognize in districts when the central office down to the teacher level all buy in, that's when you get the most effectiveness. You could come in work with educators, work with students, but if it stops at the central office level and it's just a check off the box, you'll see the results, but you won't see the full beauty of what a garden has to offer. So I would say in some districts where we work from the top down only, we've seen phenomenal results without even working with their teachers and students. Some districts we work from the bottom up. We see the impact sprout, but it's only a certain level that those flowers can reach. So it's been a variety, and some of that has supported us. We have a restorative justice grant that we have through the Department of oh wow, I just butchered that real bad. Monmouth County Judicial Department, with Neptune High School and Asbury Park High School, and that framework alone, where we have done high-level restorative conferences, really helped the schools recognize the importance of connection, because at the foundation of restorative justice, it's all about relationships. It's all about working with each other, opposed to just doing things to, or just being very encouraging and supporting. And when we have done conferences where kids were fighting for months on end, and sitting down with their parents, sitting down with the students and getting to the core of it, we had talking about the whole entire room is in tears, but the unfortunate part in schools, when you have leadership changes and people leave positions, it's like you got to start everything all over again and kind of rebuild the culture. And knowing that we're not full-time in any district, or we're not part of that internal culture, there are some challenges that you face at times when integrating ideas of culture, when admins come up with their own cultural approach and they have their way of doing things. But what's important is that we're in the community of Asbury Park. So our buy-in is beyond just us being a program in the school. They see us in the community. The parents know us. We're working with probably about 60% of the schools in Asbury Park, from Hope Academy Charter School to Asbury Park School District, where we have a reputation that's beyond just, hey, who are these guys? They know that it's something so much more than just the work that we're doing for a check, but we really want to make an impact within the community that we serve. So I kind of answered your question, one little left, right, but I feel that was a beautiful emphasis right there.
Yes, and you're building a culture that hopefully will sustain over time, even if leaders leave. That culture of restorative practices can stay.
Yeah, we're like spiritual farmers, and we're planting karmic seeds for lifetimes, so may not sprout round like Rod said, but it may come 10 years now, 2 lives from now, but the seeds have been planted.
I love it. And the seeds being planted, as you started initially I think you were mostly just at the high school level. It's probably more challenging than when you plant those seeds when they're younger. So sounds like you have a lot of success stories despite that, for students who you just really had connections with only at their high school level. So I think that's really telling. That shows that if they are downloading, as you said, you may not feel that they're connecting, but they're absorbing it, they're downloading it, and they are putting it into practice, but certainly harder at that high school level than at the elementary. But I think, as you pointed out, you have success stories that prove it's still working.
And I would say that was the beauty of Asbury Park, because when we were in the district, the first year we were just in the middle school and high school. And like Rod said, they extended us to the elementary school year 2. And you started to see the trajectory. Okay, we had this child, because we've been in Asbury Park, since 2017, it's now 2023. And we know that all the seniors, from when they're in middle school and elementary school and everything like that. So when that is nice and infused, and you're looking at the longevity of growth instead of just the immediate need, you start to see, okay, there's changes over time. There's slight shifts over time. And the younger we can get them to plant those seeds, the better off they will be in the high school. Where we go walk into high school, it's like so much love because of all the love and support that we've poured out of ourselves over those times that we were in the elementary schools. And it's beautiful to see that. And so the challenge is, it's like, how did the system sustain that when we're not in the building? Right? Like Rod said, it's like, okay, leadership changes, different principal, superintendent, even teachers. It's like, okay, how do we continue to embody this so it lives inside the walls? And even if a new staff member, new admin comes in, they feel the resonance in the halls because it's ingrained in the culture, and that's our whole goal, is like really to influence the ecosystem of consciousness, and making sure everyone is embodying at the highest level.
Love that term, ecosystem of consciousness. That's great. I wondered too, do you do training on restorative practices in the community as well, or is it just in the schools?
Not yet. Our training was around education, restorative justice, but we actually have been called in support of some businesses to do some kind of restoration with internal conflict as a policy. But once we get our location open and running, we plan to provide space where I use it with my son. You know, he's only 3 years old. And instead of me just going, I'm like, hey, what were you thinking about? What happened? You know, how did this affect your brother or your mother? Okay, what can we do to make things better? And I've been saying that to him since he was 2, and I recognize sometimes when I do something, he's like, Daddy, what can you do to make things better? And I'm like, you know, that I'm grateful to see that it's a system that allows us to handle conflict and reconciliation in a much more upgraded way. But that is the vision, is to not, because we got pulled into school base so heavily, but now we're slowly pulling ourselves out of the school base where we are at a central location. We created a training called Conscious Educators that infuses mindfulness, SEL, restorative practices, breath work, sound, and connection. And we recognize you can only teach so much in a school setting. You get an hour and a half, maybe a 3-hour PD, sometimes 4 hours. It's still not enough time to infuse something that takes stillness and awareness. So our vision of the future is creating a central location where we can create long-term, trainings for educators, youth leaders that are looking to develop skills that are going to support them in this new age of the pandemic, that we're post-pandemic or still in the pandemic that we're dealing with, to really enhance them from the inside out.
Are you thinking of spreading to other states? I would love to see you all over the world. We all need this.
World tour,
Yes.
consciousness, traveling the world. But yes, that is the goal. Our footprint is in Asbury Park as far as the community presence and, even our school-based programs. But we know we've been in over 100 schools throughout the state of New Jersey already. So we know that this can be spread easily amongst the goal. And our goal is to really create a foundation where we can do that and have our foundation set here in Asbury Park, where we have some lead staff members who've been able to embody and hold it down, right now. So it's like, okay, how do we grow? How do we scale? Maybe it's not location every place, but, keynotes, assemblies, and just really bringing this on a higher level throughout the world.
It is a silver lining of COVID. We talk about that often on our podcast, because you are seeing that buy-in more, I'm sure, because there is that need is much more able to be seen. So hopefully that is going to be helping to get this spread, because it really is so important. And again, it has to happen at the primary level, like you're doing with your son, Rodney. I mean, it really does need to start there. And the more that you do it with students, that it's done with students, the more that adults are building those skills within themselves. And then that ripple effect takes place eventually.
So if school districts wanted to reach out to you for a keynote or to help them plant a seed in their district, where can they reach you and where should they go to find out more information?
I say definitely check out our website at conscious.org, and you can inquiry. We're going to be updating to make it more seamless. And then also at info@conscious.org, and that's conscious with a K.
Yes.
So info@conscious.org, and that's our focus, is doing more workshops, more keynotes, and larger presentations. We want to influence the leaders to support them in embodying this energy so it can trickle down effortlessly within their culture of where they're operating at and what they're working with.
Oh, that's great. And I hope that this grows and grows and grows, because we all need it. We really do.
We'll make sure that we have your information in our show notes as well, so it's easy to access.
Oh, please do. Thank you. And thank you for having us. We greatly appreciate any opportunity to express our message and share with the world. It is definitely a blessing. And thank you to anyone that takes the time to listen to our message.
Yes, well, it is a blessing, the work that you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And again, I've heard of you both because you were in my husband's school, and he could not say enough about, could not say enough about the work that you did and how it's flourished in his school. So I mean, that he says every time I get an email from them, it just makes me feel so good. Just their tone, what they say, how they say it. They're just wonderful human beings, and he just loved having you. So looking forward to spreading your love for sure.
Yes. Thank you.
Yes. Yes. Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Thank you for listening. And if you would like to stay linked up, be sure to follow us on Apple and Spotify and subscribe to us on YouTube.